All right, welcome back to next video. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to plan a trip without the use of an aid. So that's our fourth and final objective. So good job for making it this far. And just kind of a preface to this section, it's important to note that a lot of digital navigation services do actually exist in transit plan. A lot of transit agencies actually have specialized what they call trip planners, which allow you to kind of input your origin and then your destination, and then kind of figure out the most optimal route. And if it's maybe kind of a regular trip that you want to make, or if there is a lot of time constraint, these services can actually be somewhat useful because they are, of course, computerized. But still understanding a general method by which we can just kind of use transit in general without necessarily being very focused on time, but still kind of having an efficient trip. It's important to becoming more independent as a transit rider, as opposed to having to rely on these kind of electronic aids all the time. And also you don't have to worry about following the plan if you kind of just have it up in your head and kind of know what you're doing. Yeah, another kind of preface element is that when we're transit planning, we need to ensure that the method that we use it's highly dependent on our goal, right? If our goal is simply to go from point A to point B, it's not that hard to figure it out, right? As long as we use the method that we'll kind of be describing, it's really not that difficult as long as we just find kind of one path, right? But if we want to think about efficiency, we might need to consider headways or speed. And of course, transit sometimes may be inaccessible, right? And so we need to also take into account if there are any access needs that we have that impede or otherwise kind of obstruct our access of transit. Even whether that, even down to if walking is kind of hard or just getting to the bus stop is difficult, and how we can kind of modify our trip to work around those needs. In this section, we'll also be using the word transit hub to just mean any kind of transfer point. Earlier, we kind of restricted it to like transit centers and park and rides and train stations, but in this section, we'll just kind of be using to refer to any sort of transfer point. All right, so now let's actually get into the content. All right, so let's first talk about the method, right? So what is the method? First, it is essentially composed of 3 steps, right? The first step is to get yourself from your origin to the first transit hub, right? Take a route. The idea is to take a route that is very close to your origin, and to arrive at a transit hub where you can transfer to another bus or another transit option. Of course, if you are thinking about efficiency, you'll want to consider a number of factors when trying to decide what route to take. Those will be kind of directness. So how close does the route get you to your destination? The idea is that if you're going north, you don't want to go south. If you're going south, you don't want to go north, right? Connectivity. So how close does the route get you to other relevant transfers? So transfers that will get you closer to your destination. You might also want to think about headways when you're trying to figure out what's relevant. A bus with very long headways might not be really relevant because it will just, it's not reliable. It will kind of extend the trip time unnecessarily. And efficiency. So this is kind of the idea of the distinction between local and express, where kind of express is faster. And we just want to know how fast in terms of speed is that route at getting you from point A to point B. And the second step is to go from one transit hub to the next transit hub. and the next transit hub to the next transit hub, the next transit hub to the final transit hub. We want to take routes that are very efficient in connecting transit hubs. So some of the same factors apply: directness, connectivity, and efficiency. And then the last step is to take a route from your last transit hub to your destination, or just a place that's very close to your destination, for example, within walking distance. If multiple routes exist and not just one route, you might want to consider multiple factors, the factors we discussed earlier of, again, directness, connectivity, and efficiency, to kind of optimize your trip as much as possible. We have a few exceptions to our method. So those are direct access and combination of steps. With direct access, it's essentially the idea that we can combine some of these steps for certain trips, right? So sometimes it's actually best to make no transfers and just kind of go from point A to another point B without making any kind of intermediary transfers. This could be because a one transit option just directly links your point A to point B, your origin, your destination, or because you'll have to make a transfer that actually takes a lot of time. And so it might be just easier to walk or just kind of access your final destination in another way. For example, if you wanted to make a transfer between a local and a coverage route, that might, for example, only come once every hour. Combination of steps. So this is the idea that you could just go origin to transit hub to final destination without having to take the step of transit hub to transit hub. And therefore going to other transit hubs would be superfluous in this instance, and some of the same considerations as direct access apply, right? Along with the considerations of directness, connectivity, and speed. Essentially, what is the most optimal route, right? Is only making one transfer at one transit hub the best option? And if it is, then there's no real reason to take another itinerary, right? All right, so now we'll do an example. And so this is the kind of enlarged screenshot of the system map for C-Tran, which is a transit provider in Clark County, Washington. And here we're going to, let's say we want, let's do a hypothetical essentially, right? Let's say I wanted to take a trip from the post office, which is, if you look on the left side where the kind of leftmost V is, look above that, that's kind of the post office, and we want to go to Fred Mayer. So that is, if you look on the bottom kind of right section next to the Kaiser Clinic on Mill Plain Street, you'll kind of find Fred Mayer. So how do we make this trip, right? So I'll kind of propose a few different itineraries, and I will kind of discuss each of them. So one of the itineraries could be walking to the Vine. So that's that V. The V kind of indicates the Vine, which is kind of a bus rapid transit, if you know what that is, type of service in that county. But anyway, we would take the Vine all the way to Vancouver Mall Transit Center. And then we would take the 80 to Mill Plain and Northeast 136th Avenue. And then we would take the 37 to Fred Mayer. Alternatively, we could make a trip, take the Vine to the intersection of Anderson and 4th Plain. Then we could take a 32 to Mill Plain and Anderson, that intersection, and then take a 37 to Fred Mayer. We could also do the first itinerary, so Vine to 80, and then we could just walk to Fred Mayer. Those are kind of our possible trips, right? Or at least the more kind of feasible ones. We kind of, therefore, have done a model of origin to transit hub to destination. So that's that Vine 8037. Notice how we've effectuated 2 transfers, right? But we also have just done origin to transit hub to destination, which is our kind of combination option. Where we just go from the post office, transfer to the 80, and then our final destination is kind of that intersection of Mill Plain and Northeast 136th Avenue, and then we just walk to our final destination. Depending on access needs, any option is of course feasible, and also depending on efficiency and kind of headways that these particular routes have. If we wanted an example of a direct access trip, for example, if we wanted to go from the Vocational Skills Center, so if you look on the route of the 80, it's kind of above Northeast 28th Street in that kind of upper right section. If we wanted to go from there to the Kaiser Clinic, which is just next to the Fred Mayer on the right side, our direct access trip could be by taking just easily taking the 80 from the Vocational Skills Center all the way down to the Kaiser Clinic, no frills, just from origin to destination. So that's kind of been all of the objectives. And in the next video, we'll do a example kind of combining all of our knowledge that we've learned from these past videos into a more complicated situation. So I hope you join us for that video, and I'll see you soon. All right, thank you.